What is going on, shipheads? We are back after a long, necessary, but maybe too long hiatus with a new version of Dr. Film, which will pretty much be preliminary now to YouTube, so you can kind of have someone to feel like you're talking to when you're driving to work. It always helps me out, especially when it's Mr. Zach, Bull, and our new friend, Steven. I couldn't think of a better conversation to kick things off with than the only piece of news that I keep hearing about from Vero, as I am one of 9 people still on it. Zack Snyder's Justice League finally coming out. What's going on, guys?
Hey there, excited. I'm anxiously awaiting this Snyderverse release. I don't know. It's gonna go either way, but it's a train wreck you got to watch regardless. So definitely be checking out.
Let's keep my name out of any involvement with this property. So
Batmobile wreck.
Batmobile wreck, yes, I'm okay with that. What about what's going on, Mr. Zach?
Why'd you say that name?
There's one. Count it.
We are going to probably have like a little side counter in the bottom corner of number of Martha jokes that Zach makes, and then we just got Steven in to ship it, and we want to welcome on. We haven't come up with a nickname for him yet. It's coming though. Something will happen.
Hopefully, it's flattering.
Some things you can't force. I
was going to say, it's not as simple as, having gone to high school with people and knowing them for a decade. Now we're just like, I have to learn new people.
Yeah. Hey, my same 5 best friends I've had since middle school, so I get it. I'm like, new people? I don't need new people. They're scary.
Do they have a nickname for you?
They do. So my last name is Elfenbein, and so they have, since my high school basketball coach, my college basketball coach, everybody on the planet calls me Elf. Is ELF. And I have no idea why, but it has stuck.
So all right. So henceforth, you'll be known as Steven the Elf. What's your favorite color?
Smiling is my favorite.
That's a good one to start with, at least. We'll maybe evolve it from there, put our own spin on it.
Just like the Snyderverse continues to evolve, 6 years after the corpse is rotted, like we too will evolve our nicknames as we see fit. But,
appreciate that.
When we talked about bringing Dr. Film back and bringing it over to YouTube as opposed to having it just on the standard cast, when we started coming up with ideas, one of the things that I've been wanting to talk about for a while has been with the pandemic. You can't say that word, I guess, on YouTube or you get demonetized. Not that we were actually expecting to be. But with everything going on, we never in a million years thought that we would have a streaming service that would co-release every major theatrical movie in a year, both streaming and in actual theaters, wherever they're open. So when they announced that after years of, fans clamoring for it, for whatever reason, the Snyder Cut was going to happen. Zach was going to get to finish his vision, and that everything was going to be wonderful for all those people that, rented planes and advertisements at Comic-Con. Everything was going to be worthwhile for it. But at the end of the day, is it really worth doing? And I wanted to really kind of pick your guys' brain about that. So where are you just initially with what's going to be going on?
I'd say I'm for it. I'm for the idea of it. I think as a production company, as a brand and a fandom or a franchise of the DCEU, I'm for them doing this, because you can either take it 2 ways. You can either just, when the movies are released are set in stone, is what it is, keep pushing forward and then just try to get better, try to have better releases down the road. But you're still going to have these blemishes on your record as fans go back and review it. And okay, well, the franchise didn't really get good until this point. You have to really ignore those early films. So fans are always going to interact with it in different ways. But there's almost revisionist history of it. I think I'm for it, especially because you go and watch the Justice League, you go and watch the movie, and just the tones from Batman, Superman being carried over, Whedon coming in and kind of readdressing some stuff, revamping some stuff. It's such a disjointed movie that, this could either be good or bad, but I'm still intrigued to watch it. And if it ends up being good, I think it could really start to, turn some tides on the franchise itself. Maybe they get some more legs and kind of establish their tone going forward in a more consistent way. But I think just from a revamping and a almost like director's cut type of version, this could be the new version of it. Instead of getting your extra DVD features or your extra releases coming out, maybe this is something we see more of where they just go back and revisit some properties that have already come out. So there's a few that definitely come to mind that I would love to see other franchises kind of do a similar attempt. You look at Star Wars, you look at Matrix. I think there's ones that have potential where if they came out tomorrow and said, we're going to do this, we're going to release it as a revamped kind of telling of the story, I'd be all for that.
I can get on board with that. My problem is we're now so there's such a rapid departure from what the original course plan was. As we were doing research for this, I actually looked back at DC's original film slate that they announced like back in 2016. I'm like, all right, we're getting Batman versus Superman this year. And then next year we're getting Justice League, Wonder Woman, and Suicide Squad. And then we're going to have a Flash movie and an Aquaman movie and this, that, and the other thing. But then it always felt that the DC universe was reactionary to Marvel as opposed to just doing their own thing. And that, to me, goes back all the way to Man of Steel, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But on one hand, yeah, Zack Snyder is notorious for having really great alternate cuts. The ultimate cut of Watchmen is phenomenal. It takes a day and a half to watch it, but it's worth doing. He's got like 4 different versions of 300. He's got the ultimate cut of Batman vs Superman, which makes that movie slightly more coherent, but I won't necessarily say better. So I'm curious what they can do with it, but I still cynically only see it as a cash grab and a way of getting a bunch of Snyder fans to sign up for HBO Max.
Yeah, that's kind of my overall thought, is that Justice League was a shitty movie and you can't dress up a shitty movie and add scenes, whatever you want to do to it, and have it be much better than the original. I mean, I get that general concept Bull was saying could be applied to other things, and so maybe that's an experiment that's worthwhile, and you could see that in other properties, but there's not much at all redeeming about Justice League. Train made us all watch it to prepare for this, which was really punishable by something really bad that I can't even think of right now. But those are my overall thoughts, that it's not going to be good.
It's going to be long, and I never made anybody watch anything. That's called professionalism.
It's going to be longer than The Godfather. I mean, that's a little rough for me to take. but I hate to say this, that there's 2 things that come to mind. There's a part of me that is like forever fascinated by the off the chain director, and maybe that's just because I grew up like loving The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, and like Francis Ford Coppola like yelling at Bob Evans and In the Jungle, and this is like maybe the 21st century version of that. And what if we're all wrong and this movie is good? I'm not saying it is, just for like complete and total clarity. I'm not predicting that this is going to be a masterpiece, but it is a fascinating and I know this is film broy, but like auteur project, which makes me kind of just fascinated by it, even if it's the worst thing ever.
No, I would definitely agree with that. It's definitely a passion project, and I'm glad that Zack gets to fulfill his vision, because Zack stepped away from Justice League for a personal family tragedy.
Yeah,
and I think he should get to tell his vision, because from what everyone's saying, like what we got with Joss's cut is just so hacked to the bone. It's not even
right.
It's not even comparable.
And I also wonder if it's both things. So I think the point about the 70, the millions of Snyder fans that are going to sign up for HBO Max, that's absolutely part of the business plan. You have to assume is more subscribers. But what if HBO Max is also trying to position itself as a safe haven for artists, kind of like how Netflix lets you make 8-hour movies? Maybe HBO Max wants to do the same thing, and they're proving that they're willing to literally let you do anything. If, of course, if it makes money. And I just wonder about that.
But then on the flip side of that, you have HBO Max when they announced their theatrical distribution plan this year, and then you had Chris Nolan and James Gunn,
of course,
and Dennis Venering for Dune saying you didn't tell us about this, and a lot of our profit comes from back end.
Yeah.
So however it does theatrically, and if there's no theatrical in that, I don't make money.
No, it's a fascinating thing. I can't wait to read the book on it. I'm hoping Mark Harris writes a book on it.
I think I would definitely agree with that. It's in the immortal words of Zack Snyder's great writing on a new scene in it. Like, we live in a society which allows us the opportunity to experience this movie. So before we go into our thoughts fully on the Snyder Cut, let's kind of wind the clocks back to the Snyderverse, where it started in 2013 with Man of Steel, and kind of the lead-in that it had to it. And from there, where we think that the shortfalls were that would have poised Justice League to, no matter where it was going to go, probably an initial failure, and how it could potentially have success, with enough time between it. So Man of Steel, when the first trailer for that came out attached to The Dark Knight Rises in 2012. And it's that trailer that's set to the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. And you have that very, uneasy tone. For the longest time, if not for the fact I saw it on the internet, and I think I shared the links with you guys. I wouldn't know it was a Superman movie because it's some guy narrating about how someone's got destiny and they're here for a reason. And it's a homeless dude working on a boat, walking on a road. And then it ends with Superman breaking the sound barrier. I'm like, oh, it's a Superman movie. Which is a weird way of marketing a Superman movie.
But you just said it right there. They attached it to The Dark Knight with that trailer show. And for those fans who liked that grittier superhero origin and journey, so maybe they knew it, they were trying to market that too.
I definitely get that. But I think that's also the best thing about it is everything that DC has done since the end of Nolan's trilogy, to me, has been super reactionary, where from the minute they're like, all right, well, these Batman movies were extremely successful. Let's duplicate what we think made that successful with other properties where it may not need it to be. And I think that as I've had more time to watch them and as they've aged, the Dark Knight trilogy just had the great experience of coming out at the perfect times. Specifically Dark Knight, because Dark Knight's obviously the one that everyone holds to the highest pedigree, the highest standard, and it's the best film of all three, without question. But I feel that if it hadn't come out at the time it had, and it hadn't had Heath's untimely tragedy, I don't think it would be as prevalent with fans as it still remains. So when they're just like, oh, well, people like that dark and gritty approach to Batman, let's do that with Superman, who is apparently, because I'm not a big DC person or a big Superman fan, I've seen the Dick Donner versions, I've seen Superman Returns, and I've seen these, but I've never really gotten on board with the character, and I still think the best portrayal of him has been like the cartoon. To me, you're taking what works for Batman and trying to apply it to Superman where it doesn't necessarily work.
I don't know if I'd say that Man of Steel is like a gritty adaptation of Superman. I think that there's some style and tones from like how it's shot and some of the scoring of it that you could see some ties to The Dark Knight and how Nolan approaches it, and that he was a producer on that movie. But I would defend Man of Steel as a film as itself, as a take on Superman's origin story. I think it works pretty well. It still looks really good. I feel like it has a little bit more substance from a style standpoint compared to some of the earlier Marvel films like Thor or even Captain America that felt a little bit just more like out of the box. I feel like there's a little bit more to chew on with Man of Steel. So I would defend it. But I wouldn't say to me, it's not a super gritty take on it outside of some controversial things on the ending for what they did with the character.
I definitely agree that if you have like a visionary storyteller like Zack Snyder, you're definitely in a position where you can have such a unique experience. Whereas the original Superman movie, you had, you will believe this man can fly. With Snyder's approach to Superman, it's you will actually feel how powerful this man is. And I feel that there are elements of that you could never have done with a different version of Superman. And I'm not saying that I don't like action with, my comic book movies. I could just watch Superman Returns if I didn't. But I feel that, there's obviously the controversy that's been milked to death over the last 8-9 years for this movie, where, Superman does a lot of stuff that Superman normally wouldn't do. And while Superman's a fictional character and he can do whatever he wants, there's still, like it kind of felt like to some like a betrayal of the character.
For the way they were starting their cinematic universe with Superman, and I do like the idea of introducing it with Superman. What does that mean for Earth? And displaying that power that he has, and that how that leads into Batman v Superman, and people being skeptical of him. And is he a threat? Is he a friend to Earth? Should he try to stay hidden? The Clark and his two dads, and getting those two viewpoints. So yeah, I definitely understand a lot of people who didn't really like it or thought it was too dark, and probably a little too much destruction. And I think you saw them scale some of that, try to scale that back with trying to make sure in later movies, make it clear, oh, there weren't too many casualties here, don't worry. But at least from the very foundation of how they were setting up how they were setting up this cinematic universe, at least I think the way they portray that character, and with this movie, it does make sense for them.
Yeah, I think it had its moments. And I think that I know that we were talking about this just a few minutes ago, but I actually quite liked the teaser. And I thought that it was an interesting take. And, what does it mean to be Superman at 15 or 5 or 7? I think that is really interesting. And I do think the point that Zach touched on about like the mass casualty thing, I think Zack Snyder and Jonathan Nolan and everybody else involved really didn't understand that like you can do both things. It can be hard to be 14 and Clark Kent. You could have a cool final battle without destroying the entire city and killing 10 million people. And so go ahead.
No, I was going to say, sorry to cut you off, but I mean, no. Marvel did the same thing where, yeah, you had your cool, Avengers battles, but the body counts added up and there were consequences to them.
Totally. Yeah. And I also think that Superman, I don't think we go to Superman for the same reasons that we go to Batman. We know Batman comes with trauma. That was my favorite part of really like all of the Batman movies, is dealing with Bruce Wayne, more so even than him like as Batman. But as Superman, like, I don't think we need it. We don't need our Superman to be clinically depressed and needing to be in my office for like, a bottle of Prozac or something. We don't need that. And so
that's why we had Bryan Singer's Superman.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to Kevin Spacey, I guess. But like, it's really, it's difficult. I think they really did a misread of that in some certain moments.
We at Ship It do not in any way condone or relate to Kevin Spacey in 2021.
Yeah, gosh, you can't.
Yeah, we had to cut him off, sever our ties with him, which were vast.
Yeah, he and Bryan Singer.
Yeah, Brandon Routh's really the only one to clear that movie with relative class still in 2021.
Jeez. Who would have thought that? That's another example of people who clearly didn't understand Superman.
But I was gonna say when the movie came out, it made money, but it wasn't the $1 billion big hit and the revival that I think DC was expecting. So I think the movie came out in June, and then by July, when San Diego Comic-Con happened, Snyder announced Batman vs Superman. Because then we were in a post-Avengers world, and at that point, DC's like, we have royally screwed up. We have had access to all of these characters, whereas, Feige literally got handed the C and D listers and created one of the best, assembled properties in modern cinema. And we've been sitting on Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, the entire Justice League, all in-house. We could do whatever we wanted with them, and we haven't touched them. So
that Comic-Con announcement, I remember that being a big deal, where it was still in the era where studios weren't releasing stuff before to get ahead of the traffic and like to control the dialogue and the presentation of what they were outputting. So everything was still captured on your cell phone, out of your pocket at the Comic-Con. You saw like, fuzzy videos being released or passed around before they got taken down for copyright. And I remember that little teaser with the "Do You Bleed" and the Batman, Superman logos coming out, like that took over the internet for those few days. And there's a lot of questions on what was going to come. We have the MCU. We already knew what that was from a certain perspective. And now comparing that to a lot of questions on, like Zach was saying, like, how are they going to bring these characters together? How are they going to build it? What do those blocks look like? Everyone was kind of just, spinning around in their head on how they're going to start to piece this together, since we've already seen one adaptation of it, or one attempt of it with Marvel.
Right. And I was going to say, yeah, the initial announcement was just the logo, and they had the gentleman that's actually, I think, going to be Martian Manhunter in the Snyder Cut, the officer for the Army. He read I want you to remember, Clark, this moment, my hand at your fist. I want you to remember the one man that beat you. And then it was like, it's the first time that Batman and Superman are really going to be together, and people just lost it. Rightfully so. I mean, we've been talking about this. There was that joke in I Am Legend. There's always been like, why have we not had a World's Finest movie or a team up of Batman and Superman? So to finally have it and potentially set up, a Justice League movie was completely, unheard of. People lost it, and then we were eagerly anticipating what was going to happen next. And then we started getting trailers for it. From the initial trailer, I always thought it was weird that we were going to get... I was on board with Affleck's casting as Batman. I know I was in the minority for that. I didn't know Gal Gadot from anything other than the Fast and the Furious movies. I'm like, you're attractive and you're in a Zack Snyder movie. You'll make it work. Never thought she'd be probably the best part of the DCEU.
She was also in Entourage. She has a brief cameo as one of Vinny Chase's girlfriends as a model.
I learned something.
Great call out.
I was going to say. But no, Batman vs. Superman, going from Man of Steel to that, again, I feel like that was kind of a huge nail in the coffin for the DCEU, because they wanted to continue Zack's vision of what was started in Man of Steel, but they had to course correct from the studio. I'm like, hey, people were really upset about the fact that, you have all these casualties and Superman's running through buildings, this, that, and the other thing. Like, they say that's not their Superman. And Zack's like, all right, I know how to take care of this. All that is going to piss off Batman. Like, it pissed off them. I'm like, okay. Then what? I'm like, don't know, but they'll be mad too.
Yeah, I think from a progression standpoint, I like how they took, here's what happened in Man of Steel. Here's a natural reaction to it. Here's how Batman may react or start to prepare against someone like Superman. On paper, logline style, I like that. I would be on board for that. I think everything you saw play out in the actual movie, all the details and all the motivations that kind of fill the gaps on that's where it all starts to fall apart. But I think I do like the idea of them taking that progression and then introducing Batman in that way. I think on that surface level, I'm on board with it. But then that's where you're going to get, the Superman fans and the Batman fans all wanting two different types of movies with that.
Yeah, those are still, I think, those good bones for a cinematic universe. It made logical sense story-wise, reacting this way. And I remember being pretty excited for the movie, and the trailers at least looked pretty awesome. The big fight scenes. They showed a lot of the
They showed way too much
of
with
the movie in the trailer. So
the last trailer, showed literally the entire movie, like Doomsday, Wonder Woman.
Right. So that's a big pet peeve. Like, so the movie, I expected there to be more, and they showed most of the cool moments there in the trailer. And then you had a lot of things that, with the story became disjointed, and a lot of people were turned off by Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, the whole Martha fiasco. So it all started to fall apart there, and it was really disappointing with the second movie in this universe. Already a lot of people let down, plus people also in the I think kind of split on how Batman acted and just straight up murking people, which was pretty awesome. But some people, did and didn't like that. You had people divided on how Superman was portrayed. So there just wasn't much to rally a lot of fans behind it.
Right. So Zack Snyder's just like, people don't like how you portrayed Superman. Wait till they see what I do to Batman. What's that line? Hey, Chris, what was that line on the roof with Anne Hathaway? No guns, no killing. Got it. We're just gonna delete the word no. And these kids really liked that Deadpool movie last month, so we'll give them a lot more of that.
I think for me personally, Batman ends up being my favorite part of that. I mean, Train, you and I jumped on a podcast before we even had what ship it is today, and defending Affleck casting for that.
Oh yeah,
and I think we were both, eager and anticipating how he was going to take on that character. I think he did a good job, and despite how disjointed that and Justice League are, it tends to be my favorite part of that. So I was on board with that. I think, if I look at Superman, like I said, I liked him in Man of Steel. I liked how they started to kind of pull back the layers of that character and made you feel for him. I think once he started to become more of an ensemble piece, every scene with him really falls apart for me personally.
Because he's the least interesting person in the room.
Yeah. And I think when you look at the plot of the movie, like I said, as you start to talk about the motivations and the pieces in the middle that kind of support the overall progression of things is where they really start to fall apart. The extended cut really becomes an essential watch for that movie because you watch it through the theatrical version. Nothing really makes sense. There's so many things that happen that there's no reason, okay, this is why it's happening. And really what's going on with the extended version is explaining that pretty much everything you had questions about or a lot of the missing pieces ultimately ends up being, it's part of Lex's plan, right? So everything that was planned and kind of pieced together ends up being like Lex's master plan. But you still don't get that full story built out, and it almost becomes like a Sherlock Holmes mystery with zero reveal. And the audience is left piecing it together on their own. And that's where, despite extending it out and having all those extra scenes, I think they still missed a mark on a certain perspective, even with the extended cut.
I was gonna say when the theatrical cut came out, like it was panned by critics. Most people were just like, it's confusing. Batman's a murderer. Superman's a mopey mess. The Dawn of Justice is literally like 30-second YouTube GIFs. There was really not a lot to go on. And from about like 2 weeks after the initial release, that was when Snyder's like, I have 45 minutes of movie that I had to cut out. That will explain a lot more. And while it does explain a lot more, it's still super convoluted.
Yes. You shouldn't need a 4-hour movie to explain a superhero film. And that's where we're kind of getting the same version with Justice League coming out. And, one thing I'm interested in as Snyder, as a visionary and as a creator, is, are there any lessons learned with this? A big thing on Batman vs Superman was the studio came in and took out a lot, and it messed up with my movie. And now we have Whedon coming in and mismatching stuff. And so now he gets his full attempt. It looks like we're still going to get a super extended story. And trust me, guys, once you see this full thing played out, it'll make sense and you'll get it. That's where I'm curious. Does he approach things differently? Does he try to kind of learn from his mistakes after he's had 2 releases come out? And this is a rare opportunity where the director and the visionary gets everything laid out on what people don't like about their movie. How can you address that? How can you react off of that? So we'll see if that's a better attempt at the extended version versus what we'll see with the Snyder cut coming up.
Right.
It just in moments, and I actually really like the opening with Bruce Wayne, Ben Affleck, who I totally defended as well. Like driving through Metropolis, getting or Gotham, I guess, like getting like the buildings falling through the cars. Like I thought that was a fascinating insight into like his motivation for this. And then it felt like there's about 5 movies in one.
Mm-hmm.
Superman and Batman, that could be one movie. Superman and Lex Luthor, that's one movie. Superman and Doomsday, that's a legendary comic book that could have been a trilogy in and of itself.
Yeah.
So it just felt like it was too much into one. And I think, convoluted, I think is probably the best way to put it, is that there was just too much, which goes back to Brian, what you were saying about it was reactionary. They needed to make Avengers. Well, there were 10 movies before the Avengers, or maybe not exactly 10, but it sure felt like it.
I was going to say, it's kind of, I think I heard on another podcast, it's like you started with Iron Man, then you went to Civil War, then you kind of shoehorned in a really bad version of Guardians of the Galaxy, and then you went to Justice League. To do the death of Superman in your second movie is such a huge disservice, because you can only kill the character once. And what was probably one of the most iconic moments of the character is now squandered. Like no other director, whenever we get another Superman version, adaptation, whatever you want to call it, will ever approach Death of Superman again because now it's been done.
I hate to argue, but I hope you're wrong. You know,
I mean, I hope I'm wrong too.
You know,
but
you know what I mean? Really, not like you yourself in an argumentative way, but like, I hope somebody's like, you know what, like this is
I'm gonna do it better.
Superman. Yeah, exactly. Like they screwed this up. They fucked this up, frankly, and like I'm gonna do this better. So I sincerely hope you're wrong. I support you in all your endeavors, but I mean,
don't get me wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but it would be like if they killed off, Captain America in, at Age of Ultron, and then like the rest of the other movies are him trying to bring him back.
Right. No, of course. And then 2 movies later, they like killed him again or something. No, you're 100% right. Unfortunately.
Zach, what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, yeah, it just goes back to how rushed everything is, and everything's trying to be shoehorned to catch up to what Marvel was doing. And you see it kind of came crashing and burning with this movie. Man of Steel, you still had hope, like, let's see where this is going. Batman v Superman, okay, it created a lot of hype. And it made a pretty good amount of money, right? But then what's that going to do for you moving forward? So that I think that lost a lot of people faith right there, and they came out with a couple other good movies soon after that when they eventually got to like Wonder Woman and stuff, but it just never really all came together for what they were trying to do, even though could be a decent foundation found in there.
Right. And we've been saying it over and over. The studio then became reactionary. It was like, people didn't like it. It was too dark. It was too this. And then, but you know what they really liked? They loved that Guardians of the Galaxy movie. So what we're going to do is the next movie, Suicide Squad, we're going to put that and kind of turn it into our versions of Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm like, we already released a trailer where it's this dark, depressing, grounded. It's like, yeah, but that's the great thing about trailers. We can make more than one and completely turn the movie over. At that point, when the fallout from Batman vs Superman happened, Justice League was already filming because they were already on such a tight back-to-back-to-back schedule. So when everything came in and the studio's like, hey, here are our notes, you're going to have to change a lot of stuff. And then Zach, unfortunately, his daughter, committed suicide. He said recently in an interview, like, I didn't have the energy to fight them. And at that point, I knew that what was the point in fighting them? My family needed me more, which is completely understandable. So he walked away. And then Warner Brothers said, well, let's get the guy that made the Avengers. That'll fix everything.
I mean, does that call into question how much of the Avengers was Joss Whedon and how much of it was Feige and the Machine? Because I love Joss Whedon. Like, if I watch Buffy 50 times over again, I still wouldn't get tired of it. But it doesn't, I don't know, for me at least, I don't know, just throwing this out there, does it make you question how much of that was him versus how much of that was what we now know is like the Marvel Machine?
Well, as I said earlier, we at Ship It Studios do not in any way endorse Joss Whedon and all the claims that are currently being leveled against him.
Yeah,
so many
certainly
people
not.
who we aren't friends with anymore. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
We're losing a lot of friends in 2021.
I mean, that's a tough job for anybody who could come in, and when the movie Snyder left, it was like 10 months before the release of the movie, I think. And then, so how much of it was really done? How much do you listen to Zack Snyder? Like, oh yeah, I had a completely different version for this movie, and
well, I mean, we're about to find out.
They only used like a quarter of my stuff, right? So I mean, I don't know. He went through a horrible tragedy. I feel for him, but like, I don't know how much different could it really be? How much of a difference could another director made coming in? How much of a difference can it make dressing up this poopy movie and trying to make something out of it when everything else, leading into it, all these other parts leading into this universe and building up to this Justice League movie were all garbage? How is this suddenly going to be good?
Like we were saying, like Snyder's able to come back and redo his version, and he needs like 4 hours to do it. Like, so if Josh coming in, whoever was coming in, this is what they had to work with. There was no sound, clean storyline as your base. And then you can kind of tweak some things here, tweak some jokes, add in some additional commentary here to explain some things. Like, I think that's just a uphill battle to take what, in his eyes, needs to be a 4-hour runway and then try to make it as a passable movie based on what was shot.
Well, I mean, originally, before Batman vs. Superman even came out and DC just dropped their film slate saying, this is what we're going to do, there were Justice League Part 1, Justice League Part 2, 2 years apart from each other. Then after Batman vs. Superman, it got condensed into one movie. And from what I think it was on Fat Man on Batman, Smith was talking about how they originally, like, it was going to kind of be their Avengers / Infinity War back to back, where, the team comes together, they figure out about Darkseid. Part 2 is going to pretty much be their Infinity War, where they just get the absolute shit kicked out of them by Darkseid. It was supposedly going to make Infinity War look like, Aladdin, which, based on Snyder's penchant for, dark and brooding, wouldn't surprise me. Would it have been earned? Probably not. So you have 4 hours, and this is basically his swan song. Like he said, like, I'm probably not going to work on another DC project after this. Why not put everything you have into it, where with 4 hours, he may have, both movies filmed. But no matter what he does, and that's where I kind of wanted to get on the cast and start talking to it. Now that we've seen, the shifts that the studio has mandated to try and keep up with Marvel, instead of having a clear, concise plan with an auteur, a visionary director, and letting them stick to that plan instead of like, well, divert here, divert here, divert here. You can walk away and we're going to completely change the tone and scale of your movie. And we're going to pretty much refilm, like Justice League, the theatrical version. They basically had to film it twice. Like there's a lot, from what I'm being told and from what I'm reading, Snyder has said, I'm not using a frame of anything that Joss filmed. Well, how much did Joss film and how much did they have to retweak in order to make it work?
I bet Josh filmed the farm scenes with Superman where he's talking about how he's itchy. I bet that was Josh. I'm fine if they don't use that.
I know for a fact the entire like Sokovian family in the third act with the bug spray and all that. I'm like, well, that's definitely a Whedon.
Yeah, and I'm fine if he doesn't use those add-ins. I think you can clearly tell what were some jokes, what were some lines, what were some scenes that Josh put in.
They literally brightened the movie and changed the color palette to the point where, like, you can tell a lot of these suits were meant to be underlit and this, that, and the other thing. Specifically Affleck's Batman suit. Like, you can literally see the fake muscle lines in the suit.
Well, now we're getting the black Superman suit, tease and stuff, which
is apparently just a normal Superman suit that they just changed in post because the studio flat out said, like, black Superman suit. Whoa there, Zach. We don't need to make, it's like, it's in the comics. Like, people want this. And be like, do they though?
That leads into my previous question though. Like, is it again going to be 4 movies in one? Like the whole nightmare thing, that could be an entire movie of itself. I personally don't want to see Jared Leto as Joker for a whole movie, but that's just me.
But we live in a society, Steven.
Yeah. I guess I'd take the role of Batman in that situation. But like, I just think it's like, there's something to be said for like a succinct, like, story. And not saying that movies have to just be like spoon fed and we don't want to understand them. Like, not saying that at all, but he just wants to fit in so much of this, and he's acting like he's never going to get another chance at something he's passionate about, which I think from the artist perspective, not to sound too film bro-y again, is sad, is kind of a bummer. So it is an interesting experiment once again.
I think it comes out, like, I just don't think Snyder is built to be the visionary, the Kevin Feige type, just because he's, I think if there was a certain film or a certain idea that he had that he was super passionate about, and he said, I'm going to take this super clean cut comic book arc and I'm going to adapt that, I think it could turn out really well. We've seen that with 300. We've seen that with The Watchmen. Like, I'm fans of those movies. I think if he has kind of a tight knit story to stick by, he can make it look absolutely beautiful on screen and we can get a great movie from it. him trying to come up with all these cool ideas he has, jam it together, I think that's where it really starts to lose traction. So, I think where they go from here in terms of like the visionary, I think it's probably for the best if Snyder's could be used in some part, but just not as the overseer or the main captain of the ship.
Right. I feel that DC's kind of found its own footing, and rather than try to have a shared continuity universe, like take advantage of your multiverse. Joker came out and it was a massive hit. It won Oscars. It was pretty much universally accepted. But at the same time, it has no ties to the greater narrative that they originally set out to do. Focus on these smaller, auteur pieces and solo movies. Just make good movies. Like the Batman looks incredible if we ever get to see it. The first Wonder Woman was great. The first Aquaman movie was fun. The first Shazam is way better than it should be.
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of Shazam, and I'm all right with that as long as they continue to push the boundaries and explore the lesser known characters, the characters we haven't seen a lot of runway with. I don't really want to see the next 12 movies be 12 different versions of Batman and Joker, because those are like the most prominent characters and things like
those
that.
Those are going to be your biggest profitable characters. And I feel like the fact that, the Flash movie that's coming out, they've announced that, Michael Keaton's Batman is coming back, and it's going to be Affleck's kind of swan song out, and that Keaton's Batman apparently is going to kind of be like the Nick Fury, and like, we're going to help put everything together in its own way. I feel that Flashpoint's going to be the linchpin that will either make or break the next 5 years of DC.
Yeah, and like with stuff like that, those are huge comic book arcs that they're going to explore at some point regardless, and probably be at the top list of things to do. So I'm fine with those, and even if it's their own kind of isolated idea, but we probably wouldn't have gotten a Shazam movie if it wasn't like, okay, we're going to do this Marvel thing, we're going to have this connected universe. Like, it'd be hard pressed for them to say, okay, we have this really cool Shazam movie, it's going to be its own one-off movie. I think that's years down the road are really hard for a studio just to jump in and do. So I think it's be a balance.
Like
I think they could do both.
Until the last
kind of
scene,
more of a connected idea.
Already in the movie, it was kind of self-contained. Like, yeah, there's Batman action figures, but it wasn't until the very last scene where you have Superman show up to have lunch with Billy that you're just like, oh, okay, you're still tying it in.
Yeah, I'd still think it would be that the idea that, okay, here's our main group of characters, here's the second round that we're going to introduce as complementary pieces in the next Justice League movie or to tease going forward. I think that's a lot harder that'd be a lot farther down their slate if they're like, okay, just if there's a unique idea, we have a really passionate visionary behind it, we're going to jump into it. I think that's one of the benefits of having a connected universe is where we get a lot of those lesser known characters. So I think it could be a balance. I think that they can have kind of a core story that we see some characters interacting with, but still have some flexibility to go off and do one-off stories. And it's not like, okay, well, this throws off the DCEU timeline or this doesn't match with this character. I'm fine having it both ways.
Say that's a good way to look at it. But in regards to Snyder Cut, we can go back and forth on it a million ways. Like, final predictions, like, do you think this is going to, one, be good, and do you think this is going to have any lasting impact moving to the future?
In a word, no. There's still, for all the hype and everything, what have we seen or heard about that they're adding to this cut that's actually going to make the movie better? Like, is it going to make that much of a difference that the black Superman suit's in it, or that Joker shows up in a dream sequence? We get to see Darkseid, but is he just in it commanding Steppenwolf to do his thing, which we already know happens, but we just get to see it for a little bit? Or is he going to be more involved? And how is he going to be, like we were just talking about, if it's not going to have a major impact on a big connected universe going forward, how excited can you get about it? So I guess I don't predict it to be very good, to move the needle very much or change much moving forward. I'm more on the side of it's the cash grab and riding the hype train, getting those HBO Max subscribers, than anything else, than what it will do for it moving forward. If by some miracle it's good, then then what? Like they're gonna bring Zack Snyder back and let him do more, or
Right, because I was gonna say you can't do a sequel to this because then it's gonna completely screw up your plans again.
right?
I don't think it'll change much in terms of the DCEU. I think that you'll have your hardcore Snyder fans that are going to say it's a masterpiece. You're going to have your DC, people, the fanboys on that side that are still going to attest that these movies are better than Marvel, which I think is a really hard case, but you'll see it made out there. So there's going to be people on the side that
you just want your little popcorn movie. These are for adults.
Exactly.
I like my comic book movies for grown-ups.
You're going to have that
words and blood, and
you're going to have that side of the fan base that's going to probably honestly support it no matter what. And then you're going to have the people, the general movie going audience that there's so much hype to it that he probably, don't have the appetite to watch a 4-hour movie and pay attention to all the little details that maybe support the overall plot that's going on. And they'd be like, okay, it feels disjointed. There's some cool shots in it, but I think that's going to fall a little bit short. So from a DCU standpoint, I think it's just going to be, probably similar reception to what Batman vs Superman was after that initial release, where some people got it, said they got it or defended it. Other people thought it was underwhelming. I hope it's good enough to the point that it's not a tank for HBO Max, where at the end of it, they could say, hey, it drove a lot of hype. It got a lot of subscribers. From a business model, it makes sense. Because I'm not opposed to studios having this in their back pocket or revisiting this as an idea for other properties.
Right. I was going to say, if you ever wanted to, if it was successful and it was a good way for it, like people are already saying they want to see Ayer's original cut of Suicide Squad. It'll never happen because Gunn's The Suicide Squad's coming out and they don't want anything to take away from that. But, I said it before, I'll say it again. To me, when the announcement came that it was going to come to HBO Max, I'm like, you don't have... to put it in conjunction with Disney Plus, you don't have The Mandalorian. You don't have an initial launch content that is just going to make people go, wow, this is really good and I want to watch this. So what you're going to do is there's no movies coming out. Nothing's getting filmed right now because of COVID. Let's just edit this, give them $70 million, which seems absurd, to pretty much do post-production and shoot. From what I got told, it's 3 minutes of new footage. Other than that, it was all finishing effects, scoring, ADR, fixing Henry Cavill's mouth.
Thank God. It's worth the $70 million. Well spent.
But that's the best thing.
If it makes that look better, yeah.
Here's $5 more. Like, genuinely, I love that between that and like the Mando, like the deep fakes that fans do on like $300 computers are better than millions of dollars from studios.
It was a powerful mustache. You can't just erase that.
I just love the fact that Warner Brothers went to Paramount, super hat in hand, and said, we need Henry for some reshoots. They offered to pay for the entire post-production on Mission Impossible Fallout if he shaved his mustache, and Tom Cruise went, no. No.
Great power move by Tom Cruise.
Right.
Big move from a little man.
Yeah. I'm optimistic about this. I hate to say this, but there is just this part of me that says, and then you guys know me now, like I'm just pretty much am optimistic about every movie ever.
I genuinely had to ask if you hated anything. You're like, oh wow, that seems like a great idea. I'm like,
such a typical elf.
yeah. I'm just like, I'm Buddy. I'm just
I was gonna say the three
Definitely
of us are some angry elves.
No, I don't think it's gonna be like. I think we're all going to jump on a pod at some point or talk in the group chat and be like, man, that one part was like really stupid. But what my
there will be this is literally called Snyder Cut Part 1, Dawn of the Snyder Cut. Part 2
Right.
will happen. And we were going to pretty much be like, so we were right and it's a piece of shit.
And my hope is that there's going to be an and. So like in therapy, we talk about the but and the and instead of the but. So it's going to be like, that was a piece of shit. However, man, that one scene was awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping for a little bit of that. And maybe that's also part of the idea that I know I'm just going to be watching it on my couch and I'm already subscribed and it isn't going to be the, I don't know. I'm just hoping there's going to be a few cool moments. That's all.
I agree with that. And I think that with Zach, the fact that he's such a visual storyteller, like there's obviously going to be great visual moments in there. But kind of like Michael Bay, I need a plot in between those cool visual moments. to kind of link them together.
Agreed. Totally.
But yeah, we'll see. It's what, 3 weeks out now? Just about. It's like the 18th of March, and then we'll be back to discuss, kind of probably like, an autopsy when we look to go over this decaying body that's somehow still around.
Hey, if Superman can come back, so can the Justice League.
Yeah, I did see that Sean Fennessy and Amanda Dobbins on The Big Picture, they're doing like a live tweet or live stream of it where they're gonna like watch it live. So maybe we should do that.
Yeah, right?
I would be down for that. I've actually been trying for a while to get us to do like commentaries, but it's just a matter of who wants to listen to us talk for 2.5 hours.
I feel like that'd be a roller coaster of emotions for me. And it's funny because like Batman and Superman, Zach knows this. For a long time, it was like my fall asleep movie where I just throw it on in the background because I could go 20 minutes in and then just start to doze off. And then I don't know what switched to me, but I just got this motivation to try to figure it out, try to see the movie and kind of the vision that Snyder was going for. So I've watched that movie so many times over and over again. So I feel like this could be a similar thing where,
that's the genius of Zack Snyder. You're sitting there, I'm like, this movie's not smarter than me. I'm going to figure it out.
I was like, I have to pick this up somehow. What is he going for? What is this? Like, they can't roll this movie out and have zero explanation on 3/4 of it. So it really became a goal of mine just to kind of revisit that. So I think this is going to be another one where it's going to be 4 hours of content. It'll be something I'll throw on in the background. I'll probably watch it a ton just to kind of figure out like there's huge amount of budget and these huge properties. And like, if there are parts that aren't landing, what's the reason for that? And there's probably going to be parts that I love about it. And then parts that I'm just like, I can't sleep at night because I have to figure it out why it's not working or why did he make that decision.
You, me, and Zach will be on a group call. I'm like, I don't understand.
And we'll make it the #1 watch thing on HBO Max, which will just reaffirm everyone's decisions that they made about it. And this was the right thing to do. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like it'll be nice to have something to watch on HBO Max because unless like a new release has come out, like I watched that Jared Leto Denzel movie, and I'm gonna watch the other one that just dropped. All I use HBO Max for is to watch South Park. So I mean, it'd be nice to actually use it for anything else.
Judas and the Black Messiah. I thought that was very good. I really enjoyed.
I think I'm gonna watch that this weekend.
I did like that.
But all right, time will tell. We'll be back probably in about a month to see if we were right or if Stephen the Elf was right. And if Stephen the Elf was right, then we'll give him a better nickname.
I heard this is going to win Best Picture. That's just what I heard. Best director, best cinematography.
We'll take our top cold takes exposed from this cast and replay them for us for the next one, so we could specifically show where we were right, where we were wrong.
Can't believe Trey was a non-believer.
Yeah, Zach will be like, God, you had so much negativity. I'm like, you did too. I'm like, no, I didn't. I always believed Zach was a genius. Ever since Sucker Punch.
I'm excited for Army of the Dead. Because the last zombie movie he made, I really liked the Dawn of the Dead.
The Dawn of the Dead remake is really good. Like we could do an entire like breakdown of Zack Snyder. Like, Zack Snyder makes interesting movies. Like the three of us that have been together since for high school track, 300 was our anthem for junior and senior year.
He needs really clean source material though, and boundaries. Then he'll make it awesome.
300 was our anthem. Watchmen was a little disjointed, but as I got into I got into the ultimate and the director's cut, it made a lot more sense. It was one of the other ones where, for a studio that keeps wanting this director to work for them, maybe you should just let him release what he wants the first time.
Well, as I liked it as a non-reader of the graphic novel going into it, so I didn't have the context for it, just as like a different type of superhero take. More of that gritty, like real world, and kind of like The Boys, like you see the darker side of it. I liked it from that perspective. I was gonna say, because I have the ultimate cut
and I'll watch that like maybe once every year or so. And the fact that they intersplice it with Tales of the Black Freighter, it literally is a panel for panel adaptation, which coming off of, that was 2009, so they were still high on that whole Sin City faithful as all hell adaptation from the source material. It's interesting to go with. But then after that, where people were kind of mixed on it, then he did Sucker Punch, that animated owl movie. And then that's when he started to dive into the DC pool. So, I mean,
I forgot about that movie. Legends of Aulul or something.
Yeah, it's not a bad movie. I mean, it's a kid's movie, but at the same time, like, it's visually interesting. Sucker Punch used to be that movie that used to get me so angry.
Well, now I'm just thinking of what other, properties like that, written materials, like Bull was saying, you got to give him this literal written story. I want to see him do the Butter Battle book. You remember that Dr. Seuss book? It was basically like the Cold War and all the two sides, how they butter their bread, and they're making these ridiculous weapons back and forth. He could do something with that.
We need a 6-hour Snyder take on that.
We need the Snyder's Dr. Seuss bill.
But the pages, the book's only 30 pages. There's more to it.
Zach, it is literally go, dog, go. I'm like, so we're going to shoot it like the Fast and the Furious. These dogs are like premier secret agents. Before we give Warner Brothers any more ideas for movies, we should probably wrap it up. But no, we'll be back. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
I hope Steve's right. I'm rooting for Steve.
I'm rooting for Steve too.
Yes, love it. Team Steve, appreciate that.
Sorry, kids. Steve's gonna be wrong.
Sorry, Zach. We can still be friends.
It takes a lot to be Zach's friend. I was gonna say, take it from someone that wasn't always. Being Zach's friend is a privilege.
I see.
Savage.
I'm with you.
All right, boys. Well, if that's it for now, I'll talk to you guys later.
One peace out.
That's right. One.
Welcome to the party, shipheads.
What up, shipheads? It's your captain.
What's up, shipheads? Welcome to another episode of the Ship It Podcast.